Hello, everyone. Today we have Shatabdi, who is the Vice President of Global Application Engineering Services at PVH. This is going to be an exciting conversation. She is quite a successful leader. She also has a very different approach to speaking her mind. And I think you're going to like this idea of small moments of speaking up that matter a lot and that make a huge difference. So it doesn't have to be this big monumental change. And she's going to share a lot of stories about this with us today. So welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Ivna. And again, really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak my mind energetically here. And I will start with quoting some small moments, like you said, examples where it matters. And just one quick example, as a mom, working parent, and during pandemic, we were all used to blurring the lines between our personal and professional lives. And there were times where we were in meetings, or there were associates that would schedule meetings beyond 5 p.m. And of course, some of us, some of our kids kept missing their classes. And there was this very nice, soft lady as part of a meeting where she said, "Hey," to one of our associates, "Hey, you're scheduling meetings after 5 p.m., and my son is always missing them." And at that point, it struck to me, and it was just a targeted intervention right there when I said, absolutely, we shouldn't be doing this. And let's make it a habit. If we really cannot do it before 5, only then we ask everyone, provide them a little more notice and heads up, and try not to schedule after 5 p.m. If we have to, provide advance notice, ensure that there aren't any personal engagements. And just that, it took me probably a minute to just support her in the moment. And after that, she was very thankful. And the associate who was scheduling that was also very appreciative and thankful for the feedback, because he said, "Oh, I wasn't aware. It just did not click my mind." So it's important, such small moments where associates or even leaders need to speak up and just be aware of the situational changes going on and ensure everybody is at the same page.
Yeah, it's a small gesture. It's less than 1 minute, like you said, but it makes a huge difference for the people and the project, for the people who are challenged by that situation. Now, is that something that came naturally to you to clarify that and mention that boundary and the reason why people needed to leave the mothers at a certain time? Or was that something that you hesitated to do?
So I would say if I were in the beginning of my career, I would have hesitated. Comes to my mind, and it came to everyone else's mind who was part of that meeting. But only a few chose to speak. And if I were early enough in my career, I would have thought this being negatively perceived by the leaders up above. However, in this meeting, I was one of the senior leaders, and I felt it was important for me to provide the right support to the associate who is speaking up. And if I didn't, I would have felt guilty. It was just, I wouldn't sleep well at night.
Yeah, so this was you advocating for the culture, advocating for the people, and being a voice when other voices may have been a bit threatened, a bit scared to talk about an important issue for them, but that maybe was difficult because of that fear of how it was going to be perceived and even of some level of backlash. And yeah, I think that's critical. So to have that awareness as a leader and understand that it's hard for people sometimes to speak up, but that it's important to not only role model speaking up and talking about these things that are really about the whole person and their personal lives and families, not just purely the commitments to work. Because At the end of the day, there's more to it. There's a balance that has to happen.
Absolutely. And it also challenges everyone who's trying to accomplish a goal. The how to get to that goal is also very important. And how do you get to your goal involves having conversations, collaboration, but in the right manner. And I feel that how approach is important for us leaders to ensure, even in small moments where how do you get to your goal is important. Having that spirit and the right path towards it is important to foster collaboration and foster a very tight relationship. And as a result of this, the message went broader than just that room or just that set of associates. And it just became a best practice for everybody to think hard, to think twice, to really make sure we have a global team where associates are in Hong Kong and Bangalore and in different time zones. And that mindset went beyond cross the borders as well.
So the result of one small speaking up moment can be quite phenomenal, really shaping the culture. And another thing that you mentioned that I thought was interesting was that the person who was scheduling that meeting at later hours was not doing so to be difficult. He was just unaware of the implication of that. And by simply expressing and explaining what the problem was or what the implication was, he was able to adapt and start to adjust and think about and consider that perspective every time he had to, or he was going to schedule a meeting at a later hour going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was also a lesson learned. And that was a light bulb moment for myself as well when he came back and he said, "Oh, I just did not realize." And sometimes the conversations are just very easy if you speak up and the person sitting on the other side of the table is as unaware, or I would say as caught off guard, because he was just not thinking about the other dimension.
Yeah, because maybe it's not relatable to him. Now, what was a moment that relates to speaking your mind that you were proud of? Something that you've done in your past that was an achievement that you were proud of?
I know we started this meeting with my recent title as Vice President of Application Engineering Services. My career journey started in the e-commerce domain prior to joining PVH, which is the home of two iconic brands. I'm so proud of Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. Prior to here, I was part of Hitachi Consulting and was working in the e-commerce domain. And when I started with PVH, it was still similar domain, responsible for the Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein's e-commerce footprint globally. But I had a lunch with my CIO as the leader. And again, I'm very thankful for those moments that they create where you go and have lunch with a PVH leader. And I was talking to her, and I was, of course, very prepared. And my question to her was, is there a specific role where you need help? And I am ready to take up a new challenge or even change my domain if I have to, because I've, of course, dealt with e commerce about 15 years of my life and would like to learn something new. And I was surprised with the forthcoming response and the opportunities that the company had. And of course, at the same time, PVH was undergoing one of its transformational projects in the resource planning world. And we were setting up the markets like Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, North America onto SAP, the Enterprise Resource Planning Platform. And there was absolutely a need to bring a team up who could support the platform and support the entire supply chain end to end. So not just look at ERP in its silo, but look at how the applications that PVH uses to create and design our garments and plan those raw materials and then get them manufactured in our factories and realize the revenue of those sales back through the ERP. And a team was needed that could stitch it all together with the SAP platform. And great opportunity, very different from my e-commerce domain. And I was excited. I said, absolutely, I would like to take this up. And I feel that the proudest moment because I wasn't fearful. I was able to express my desire and my enthusiasm in being able to try out a new domain. And I had the confidence, which I believe the leaders were looking for. And that took me to where I am today. Now I have a global team. I have a team set up in Hong Kong, in Bangalore, in North America, and Europe, and we're expanding.
Oh, there's so many things that I like about that story, which are, first of all, there was an opportunity to speak to some of those leaders in your organization and you took it. Second, you leveraged that opportunity by obviously being prepared, but also by making the move of asking for what you wanted. And that's really hard to do when you have an opportunity like that. Essentially, you were creating your own opportunity by getting in front of these leaders, asking for what you were looking for, making yourself available, expressing your passion and your enthusiasm, and then saying yes when the opportunity emerged. You spoke your mind in several ways leading up to that career shift for you that has led you to where you are today. But essentially, you created that opportunity for yourself. You had agency.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put that right in front of the audience because it is very important. The corporations would create a platform, and the senior leaders are there to mentor, to guide, and provide opportunities. But they're also looking for the other side of the handshake, the associate themselves to come prepared with how and what their vision is. The right blend of the two really takes your career to a state where you feel proud of.
Yeah, and like you said, bringing the other side of the equation. So people need to bring forward their interests, how they envision their contribution, so that the leaders can guide them and match them with the opportunities that are available or that come up. Trusting oneself is also very important when it comes to speaking up, even in the smallest moments, but being able to speak our minds unapologetically requires to some extent that we trust ourselves as well and to make our decisions and to make the moves that are aligned with what feels right for us. So was there a moment in your career where maybe others doubted you and you trusted yourself?
Absolutely. So I'll go back to the same moment, right? My CIO, and I'm such a big fan of her. She is my mentor and she is my true role model. And I feel like if I have a challenge, if I doubt myself, she's my sounding board and I can always talk to her and express, am I ready or not ready? Things of that nature. So this opportunity landed and I had no team in the Asia Pacific region. I really had to start the ground up of interviewing, screening candidates, building a team across from being stationed in the United States. And at the same time, the first deployment in Japan was already completed. So I had less than 2 months to stand up a team and make it efficient and productive. Of course, when I stood there, I still remember in that room full of people, everybody had had questions and everybody doubted how can you really screen, interview, get a team ready, and boots on the ground in a region where you're not physically present. So yes, some people called it poison chalice as well. And I didn't doubt myself. And I said, if my leaders can believe in me, I should believe in myself as well. There's something that they saw in me, and why not? Why is it difficult? And I leveraged the right network I had and started the interview process, screening, and then I also flew in as we were converting and starting to make the offers. And it was December of 20, right before the pandemic. And I was there with my team ready, boots on ground, working with Japan. And as I flew back home in January, I started hearing about the pandemic. So it was nick of time, but I felt because there were doubts, I took it even more seriously and I made it a mission to prove it back.
Wow, that was a also very tricky period right before COVID, and
Yeah.
especially in Asia, things were moving quite fast there. And what I really liked about what you shared was that you didn't doubt yourself because you realized that the leaders believed in you, and you thought, then let me do it. Let me honor this. If they believe in me, they see something in me that maybe I don't see myself, but I need to trust it. And so you trusted yourself. The second thing you shared was that you embraced it because at that point you wanted to prove it to yourself and maybe even to others that whatever doubt they had was not real.
That's true. I took that up as a challenge and wanted to prove people who doubted me. I wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah. So we can always use that doubt that people have as a motivator.
Exactly. And I know I keep telling the same stories back to my team and also as a mom to my kids. There are always two sides of a coin. You can look at how such situations can dishearten you or discourage you, or you can flip the coin and look at it as a challenge and motivate yourself. And then it becomes self motivating. Once you flip the coin and flip the situation for it to be a challenge, it's always becomes energizing. And then you get into the rhythm of it because the next time a similar situation happens, you know how to react, you know how to respond positively to it.
So there's a learning curve, there's an experience curve where you feel increasingly more comfortable with those situations, even where there's some doubt.
Yeah,
as you go through it and as you face it over and over again.
absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the other things that you shared with me was that you believe in support reverse mentorship. Could you share what that is?
Of course. And I credit PVH a lot for some of these mentor mentee match programs that they have created, which cuts across various verticals and it cuts across the generational diversity that we have within the company or the cultural diversity that we have. And there is an opportunity for any leader to enroll themselves to be a mentee, to be mentored by someone. And the HR partners look at pairing them up with whoever they think would be fit based upon the needs and the profile of the mentor and the mentee. And it's such a neat program because I feel learning doesn't stop even as a leader. I can learn something new, I can learn something more. And this goes even top above. My CIO says the same, even my CFO and my CEO, Stefan, he himself says, oh, you know what? I learned something new from my daughter. And she picked one of her garments and she said, Daddy, if this had an enemy, it would look better. And it's just thought starters. So learning never stops if you are even at the top of the pinnacle in the leadership. And if you take the same spirit forward, you could learn a lot from associates around you. So I have an intern co op Christopher, who just came into my office the other day and said he needed some time to talk through certain ideas that he had. And I said, absolutely, why not? Come in. And he started talking about, hey, I just started with PVH here and I've been looking at some of these applications. And then he comes back and he says, all of this can be simplified if we just narrow some of the options for the associates to fill in. And we say, hey, I want this access for this, and this is the user you need to mimic. And he said, that's all we need. And if we narrow it down, because if you have too much of data that you're requesting the associates from, you have way more paths to get it correct and get to the goal. But if you narrow this down, it can save these many man hours. And I was amazed. And I said, wow, Chris, I never thought about that perspective. And he said, you could technically use an AI solution to just scrape and autofill this in, because AI solution knows who is trying to enter this form, and all of your data essentially is in your laptop, in your system. And it can say, okay, I can fill this in for you and I can get you the access to the system. And I was like, this is amazing, Chris. I didn't even think about it. And that I call is reverse mentorship, because he taught me something which was very new to this new generation. And I guess when we are in our day in, day out operations, we lose that bent of mind to be able to think from a diverse perspective.
Yeah, it's a great program that you guys have, because it really does leverage the diversity of thought in the company, because younger folks are going to bring something different. They understand certain dynamics that other people don't, like Christopher. And the other aspect that I thought was really interesting from your story was that Christopher spoke his mind with someone who was quite more senior than him. He wasn't shy. He wasn't awkward about it. He wasn't holding back from sharing what he had to offer. And he actually added value, and you recognized the value that he brought forward. That creates a really positive situation, because I know that a lot of people struggle sharing their ideas upwards, especially with people who are a few levels above them. They don't think what they have to say and their ideas are valuable, worthy enough. But this example shows that it is. If Christopher was able to share something that he had more visibility around, then he added value. And I think that's the idea of reverse leadership from what you're sharing.
Absolutely. And I would say that expression of your free ideas needs to be there. And if you go back to, again, the historical civilizations, whether it was Greek or Romans or any of those civilizations, the pinnacle was always the free flow of ideas. And that should never be restricted based upon your age, your seniority in corporate. And I feel, again, that's a culture that leaders talk about should create, but should also be something that associates and the novice analysts in their beginning careers should understand that it's okay to speak up and share ideas. The least that would happen is the idea may not go anywhere, but the likelihood of that being successful and going somewhere is way high. So risk versus reward, risk is very minimal. It's just word out the door. Reward is way too high.
Yeah, the reward is boundless.
Yeah.
You never know how your idea can really transform something. There's infinite possibilities, whereas the risk is very limited. And one of the things that I really like to talk about, and I shared with you, was this idea of respect, because to create a culture of open communication, it's really important to have respect and to create respect and to feel respected. And I asked you, and I'd love to hear this, is what is a situation that you felt the most respected? Because that's going to give our listeners also an understanding of what makes people feel respected, so that they can do the same to make their teams feel respected.
such an important question, because respect respect might mean something like just unification of ideas, or respect might mean to some no challenges or no arguments, right? It could mean a lot different to leaders based upon where they stand and where they sit, or the culture that they come from. For me, respect truly is acknowledging my value and acknowledging my own self as I am. And I feel that's respect. And I would give an example of a situation again in one of the meetings. And the person I'm going to talk about is my best buddy. He's the one who onboarded me at PVH, and we called ourselves partners in crime. So it goes back to my e-commerce world, Brian McGrath. And he and I would really be the best buddies, and we were paired together. He was more the business facing, and I was responsible for the platform. And we would have, when I started at PVH, we would have the right levels of negotiations. This enhancement for the business, or should we not? Should we delay? How do we deal with it? So it was the right push and pull. That's what we used to call. And after I took my new role, there was yet another meeting that I was asked to join and participate. And Brian was so nice at introducing me. And he said, hey, and Shatabdi is one of my best friends at PVH. And I really like, if I'm in the meeting with her, I know it's going to go positive. And I felt so good. It was even after he went into his own domain and was looking after the North America retail business. I was more into the SAP and the ERP world, the value chain world, but that relationship didn't change. And he still respected me for what I am. And I felt really good about it. And I felt the room itself in that meeting was very positive and was aligned and was listening to the conversations. So I feel it is important. You need to create the relationship, and a trusted, respected relationship. And if you do, that's forever. That cannot go anywhere, whether you meet that person every day or not, or you are in two geographically different cities, or even if you move on to a different company, you still have that camaraderie.
Wonderful example. It reminded me of something as well, which is, first of all, he did share to the people in the room that all your qualities, your contribution. He talked about you in a very positive light, which you weren't expecting. So obviously you felt heard and appreciated for it. But the secondary benefit is that by highlighting you and appreciating you in front of other people, he was in a way preparing people to truly listen to you. So he was prompting them to pay attention to what you had to say going forward, because he was elevating you in that moment with that audience. And so it's a win-win situation.
Yes, it is. It is. The key takeaway is also, when my team sees that, that is how they collaborate. So it's also about delivering the right message to associates. This is how we trust each other, respect each other, and show up to each other. And I think when the team sees you in action or sees someone else in action, that carries a lot more meaning to them. And they can then really include each of those moments in their day to day when they interact with others.
Yeah, and I hadn't even thought of that. So that's another benefit, role modeling the leadership behavior of respecting others. There's no losing there. Why not do it every day? Because it's just adding so much value. And obviously you're going to respect him more as well, because naturally building more connection in that moment with him as well, which increases the trust factor. So it's all good consequence. It's all positive. Why not? Why not do it more?
Absolutely.
One more thing that I wanted to ask you is around your personal brand, how you like to describe it.
That's a very good question because you talk about the personal and the professional brand, and there are times where the two personas blend very well, and it's really difficult to keep the two different. But I would say when I am with my team or with a group of team members, my choice of words and my use of words is very collaborative. I try to choose we instead of I in those scenarios. And especially when we have a collective goal to accomplish. And I think it's almost so what do we have here? What is the situation that we need to deal with? And it tries to bring that collective mindset together. And sometimes when you have to truly make the decisions of I, is when I have to pivot back and really say, hey, I need this done by X day or X time. And let's make sure that happens. So when I'm requesting the the deliverable by a certain date, that's my I persona. But then there is also that message that goes around that says, let's make it happen, which is we all need to make it happen and work through it. So I would say my personal brand is truly being seen as very collaborative leader. However, being for the deliverables. And I guess that's the balance you always have to maintain. You still need to be collaborative, open, being listening to your team and to others, yet you need to make sure that the focus on target is still the focus and the goals have to be met by a certain deadline and we can't slip. So it's that balance of the two. The deliverables and values are very important to me, both in my personal and professional life. And I'm collaborative to the most extent to be able to get us there.
Yeah, I like that, Shatabdi. I've heard you say the word collaborative all throughout our conversation. So I know that's important value for you. That makes a lot of sense. And talking about the need to be firm at times with the I statements and balance those two, I think is really key. I'd be curious to know which of the two, the moments when you're more firm with the I or more collaborative with the we, which one took you longer to develop and learn? Which one was the least natural to you?
That's a very tough question because I know from the beginning the we and I was something I would keep tossing in between. So it wasn't difficult, I have to say, and it was probably just managing the balance of the two and not flipping in between the two a lot. So the balance took me a lot more time. And I really had to be aware to say, is it a we moment versus an I moment? Because sometimes I would naturally be I and we, and I had to really say, okay, there are two different personas. I really have to make sure that I have the right balance between the two. So the balancing of the two took me the most time.
That's interesting. So you were comfortable with both moments, the firmness and the collaborative part, but it took you a while to figure out what was the best moment for each, how to balance the two, and when to apply one versus the other. So being more intentional about playing with those two, the strong and the together.
Yeah, and I would give you a little more stories there. As I was growing up, it was I am an individual contributor. I have to achieve this. I need to make this work, get to this goal. Whereas when I was playing with my team, it was we have to get there. So it was a very clear delineation where it's I versus where it's we growing up, right? Early in the career as well, I, as an individual contributor, versus the team meetings, which were very small and simple. But as you grow in your career, you don't truly have those two different audiences or those two different personas so strictly defined. And that's where I would struggle. And sometimes I would say I, and sometimes I would say we. And I really had to take a step back in time and really understand why was that happening.
Yeah, so there's something for our listeners to think about when they use their I statements, when they use more collaborative approach, something worth thinking about. And to finish off, I want to ask you about how you encourage your team to speak their minds unapologetically.
If I could bring some of my team members along, that would truly do this justice. But I would have to give you some examples, of course. So there are different levels of communication that I have with my team, which is we have our staff meeting, which is of course myself and my direct reports. We also have town halls and broader meetings where every single associate within my team is included. I also have one-on-ones with my direct reports or with associates that I'm mentoring. The guidance that I have for each of these situations varies. In most of our town halls or broader meetings where we have associates from all different geographies joining us, the meeting and the content is more around this is our vision, this is our collective goal, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, this is how we will get there, questions. And then from there, if you need more time with me one-on-one, let's talk about it. Or based upon their questions, I will have to say, hey, next time I'm there, let's find some time and talk through it. And then we get into the details. In my staff meeting, what I encourage is that's a smaller audience that is with myself and my direct reports. And we always start the conversations with how's everyone doing? How's your family? Just making sure everybody within my team develops a relationship with each other, like the same thing that I was talking about. Develop that relationship, and then the rest flows in. And the best way to do it is really find a common theme, a common ground that you connect on. It could be playing cricket, it could be watching a scientific fiction, or it could be just doing your household chores by yourself. It's good. Those are the types of conversations I have that really makes the associates comfortable. And once they are comfortable, they start speaking authentically, like thinking, the ideas keep flowing. And then when I am in one-on-one conversations with my team, I would open up and I would tell them, hey, this is how my week went. Here were my ups and here were my downs. And here is what's going on my personal front. And here is what I'm dealing with on my professional front based upon what I can share. And that makes them feel that I am vulnerable as well. I'm human as well. And I get some advices. So I do get some advices around, hey, my daughter is preparing for her high school preparation, and they would throw in ideas that I would be really happy with. Or my son had a tantrum the other day, and they would really be very open and honest about the feedback that they give. And then the conversations really take to a very next level of flow, because then even if I have to provide a feedback which is negative, it is very well perceived. It is not difficult. Or if I have to provide a very positive feedback, it means the world to them. So I feel choosing the right level of conversation in the right setting is very important. Making the associates more comfortable in that setting, whether it is in public, in a smaller group of audience, or one-on-one. That's my responsibility. And once I see and I feel that they feel comfortable, I know that the ideas would start flowing.
So increasing the comfort level on those team meetings, on those one-on-ones, demonstrating it from your end, and on the bigger meeting where you're setting the vision, it seems like it's all about also clarifying the expectations around the process so that the team members know that at that point they can ask questions, and then after that they can schedule a one-on-one with you to ask more questions and engage. And then when you're in that one-on-one, then you're more vulnerable, you ask them questions and you create that comfort. So it all works together.
It does.
This has been lovely. I really appreciate your stories and your learnings and your career insights around speaking your mind unapologetically, Shatabdi.
Thank you so much, Ivna. And I really enjoyed the opportunity and the course of our conversation. It just didn't feel like I was preaching. It was so natural, and some of it is very introspective as well, which in my own performance and development plan, I can go back and say, hey, this is something that I need to work on, or this is something that I can continue doing. So I felt like this was also very introspective for myself as a leader too.
That's lovely to hear. And I find that the best episodes are those that are introspective for our guest. So I appreciate your introspecting with us.
Thank you. And of course, I want to make sure that any advice I can provide to the younger generation or to the beginners is something I give back to the society. And I feel it is my moral obligation to do my little bit to bring people forward. And if they have ideas, have them speak up unapologetically.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful ending. Thank you so much, Shatabdi.
Thank you, Ivna, and have a very nice day. I really enjoyed the opportunity being here. And thank you so much for your platform. That is amazing.